No shortage of things to discuss. Let's bring in Darren Dreger this morning. Dregs, we will get to the Tkachuk trade in just a second. Let's start with the latest on the Edmonton Oilers, and it starts with Dickinson getting a 5-year deal, $4 million on the AAV, 3 years of a no move, 2 years, 16 no trade. I think people are really happy with the 4-year AAV. Looks like they're going to lock in their third line center here. What do you think about that move from Bowman and Jackson?
Well, I think it's an important one for sure. There are some critics that go, well, if you get Murphy done, which is trending in that direction as well, Dickinson done on a 5-year term at $4 million per, that's good work, but is it different than what didn't work last year?
Yeah.
And I can understand that, but I think there's a lot more that goes into it. And, Jason Dickinson we know he's a good player, and he's a utility forward. He is a defensive center type of guy that you need to win with or can help you win in the playoffs. And, they gave up. So on a $4 million AAV, that sounds like a fair number for him, for what he provides at 30 years of age. The term is as long as you would want. You wouldn't want to go any longer than that. And you have to give up some trade protection. I think, what is there, a no move through the first 3 years?
3 years, no move. Then the last 2 years are 16 no trade list.
Right. So, that's value. That's value for Dickinson, and it's value for his family. So it has to go beyond Dickinson and Murphy and the hiring of the new coach and Mike Babcock, right? How is this team going to play differently? Are they going to play differently? What pieces are going to be brought in to build on what they've had in the past and what they have currently? But I'm okay with it. And then you also guys have to look at the market too, right? And often you're better to try and keep what you already have. And that's in Dickinson. And as I said, I believe, like others have speculated, but Murphy is going to get done. He's going to get done. So, now you've got two pieces that and you're looking at what the market presents, either via trade or in free agency. And the reality is there just isn't that much out there that's available. So I'm good with Stan Bowman trying to and will lock down these two guys.
The news late last week, Mike Babcock, obviously the investigation has come. It's fine. We can expect an announcement sometime, I guess. I don't know. Any thoughts on when that might be? And just your thoughts on this whole process. I didn't think the investigation would take, as some people said, 60 days, but it did wrap up fairly quickly with all the smoke we were kind of hearing about, I guess.
Yeah, but I think what you have to do is consider that, how much of the work would have been done back in 2023? Well, not a whole lot by the National Hockey League, because Babcock resigned, so they didn't feel like they had to get as in-depth as they did. The Players Association most definitely would have talked to the players who were allegedly involved in that process back in 2023. So it does feel like the NHL kind of had a head start in all of this, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see who was involved. I mean, clearly the commissioner's office in Bill Daly, deputy commissioner, and Commissioner Gary Bettman involved. Jared Maples, who's the chief of security, executive VP for the National Hockey League, participated in all interviews, as did a league-appointed lawyer, and the NHLPA had representation in those interviews as well. So when you cast that web and you get through how many interviews they did, including Babcock, and okay, there's some stuff, and you could read between the lines of the brief statement that the league put out. There was some stuff that they didn't love that was inappropriate, I think, but to what degree, we can't be sure. Sure, there was speculation of some type of smoking gun. Well, obviously there wasn't that.
Yeah.
There wasn't that. Yeah. Or the NHL would have said, "No, we're not doing this again." And I was told before the investigation started, but when we knew that it was going to be enacted, that the NHLPA was fine with whatever the determination of the NHL was going to be. So if they had said, "No, we found evidence of wrongdoing, so we're not in a position to clear Babcock," well, the PA would have been good with that, right? They'd have been fine with that. But they also acknowledge that if the NHL, in doing its due diligence, finds that there's nothing that can stand in the way of Mike Babcock making a living and returning to a bench, that they would be fine with that as well. So that's why we're now on the cusp of the Edmonton Oilers calling that media availability and announcing the inevitable that Babcock will be the next head coach.
That should be an interesting one as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that should be a very interesting availability. I think some people are
thinking
maybe
just
Tuesday,
to interject here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, too, how this is going to be managed. You know, will there be a little bit of preemptive damage control? Like, does Babcock get rolled out with in a sit-down interview in some capacity? I don't know. I mean,
like a one-on-one sit-down with a rights holder or something. Yeah,
it has that smell to it.
Maybe.
Only because, you know, look, I mean, you guys are surrounded, and you're part of the process. The media in Edmonton does a masterful job. Terrific job. There are going to be some incredibly hard questions that are thrown at Babcock and Stan Mullman, Jeff Jackson, whomever else, you know, attends on behalf of the Edmonton Oilers. So from a PR perspective, I wonder if Edmonton is looking at it and going, okay, we got to let's see if we can get ahead of this in some way, shape, or form. That's risky business, because then you pee off, you know, everybody else in the local media. So maybe they just roll them out with everyone flanked with them, as I said, and they take their punches. You know, Babcock, he knows what's coming. He knows there's a line of questions that aren't going to be easy for him to answer, and we know how he's going to address it. He's going to dive on his sword again. That's what he's going to do, and he's going to hope moving forward that he's judged on wins and losses, right? And McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman and the group of players who were in his camp initially will be judged by the same thing. But at least once you get to the unveiling and the media availability and all that, I think everybody moves forward.
Darren Dreger with us on the show this morning. He's on the Firehouse Subs hotline for us. Just sticking with the Oilers for a second. I know we got bigger stories to get to, but so after the Dickinson signing, they've got about $10.7 million left in cap space. Yeah. They've got Doc and Stastny, who I think they want back as RFAs. So I mean, that might knock it down to like 8.5. I'm not sure what the Murphy number is going to be, but let's just say it's around 4. So that leaves them with 4.5 mil. Still don't have another goalie to play with Tristan Jarry, so that's got to get sorted out. I guess this is my long way of asking, what's the latest on Darnell Nurse? Because they're going to need to try to free up some cap space if they're going to change the roster outside of just running it back. So is there? Do you think there's a timeline on Nurse at all, like with the draft and free agency looming?
Well, sooner the better, I would think, would be Edmonton's perspective on that. And, you know, with the draft looming later this week, it is a breeding ground for this type of activity, right? When you drift into July, it gets a little bit more complicated unless there's teams out there that Darnell is willing to consider that are on the list that are looking for a defenseman, and they don't get a defenseman, and then they creatively find a way to do something after the fact. It's just Friday, Saturday of the NHL draft is always just active, right? With all sorts of trade scenarios that are being discussed right now, and you see the big names that will get rolled out moving forward. So I checked yesterday, and I was told that it's status quo on that front, which tells me that they're not close. But look, I think that Bowman is going to find the right fit for Darnell Nurse. He might have to get creative, as we've talked about before, and take a contract back or two that he doesn't necessarily love. Maybe players that need a change of scenery that could work out well. But I'm not certain of that either, because, outside of Edmonton, we've talked about this before. It's not that managers and hockey ops people don't like Darnell as an NHL defenseman. They like him. He's a good defenseman. He's got grit, high character guy on and off the ice. They just don't like the $9.2+ million cap hit. That's the reason that this thing has to be slow played.
It'll be nice for Brady and Matt to finally do their podcast in like the same. They'll have the studio of all studios, right? Like, I mean, something you and Rashad will dream of, I guess. But it's just the thoughts on the deal. And then we were talking too, like, what's next for Ottawa? You get those picks. I mean, they're not there. They're kind of here. So
they've been heading in the right direction. They are, right? So you want to keep that going.
What do you get a sense of a next move maybe being from a Senators point of view too?
Well, they're very eager, if not desperate, to add a top six forward.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple if they can.
Like before
right?
the Tkachuk trade,
Yes.
they were hoping to do that, right? So
Yeah, before they were. So we'd heard rumblings of this, but I would say in the last 4 or 5 days, but nothing that you would report on because it was just too speculative. And frankly, it's like the boy who cried wolf. There's always been trade speculation around Brady Tkachuk, at least for the last couple of years anyway, right? And Brady talked about it not that long ago and how it was a distraction for him. I think that Steve Staios did a great job in managing this. I do. I mean, at the end of the day, okay, it's been reported that there was a list of 4. I'm here to tell you that really it was Florida and that was it.
Yeah.
Essentially, that was it. So, okay, now you put yourself in Staios' spot. You know that you're giving up the best player in this because there are no players coming back. There's a boatload of futures. I mean, 3 first-round draft picks is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And then that second-round pick matters as well. So that's high-level currency. And my Ottawa sources tell me that as soon as this deal was announced, Staios' phone started ringing because there are teams that are either looking for another pick in the top 10. So we're looking at the number 9, right? Or there are teams that are low that are trying to get up there, right? So look at, some of the names that are in play. Mason McTavish from the Anaheim Ducks. Could he be a good fit in Ottawa? I think he could be a good fit in Ottawa. There are some who question why he would be available, but it's got to be all cap related with Gauthier and Leo Carlson and everything they've got to look after in Anaheim. Pittsburgh trying to move up in the draft. That's why you're reading about Brian Rust and Ricard Raquel. These guys being in play. St. Louis is trying to get involved in a number of different trade scenarios. So Staios he's going to be busy, but I think the draft capital that he now has is going to land him a decent player. And hopefully it's a player that wants to play his career in Ottawa, because that obviously wasn't the case for Brady Tkachuk with 2 years remaining on his deal and him making abundantly clear to the Ottawa Senators that he wasn't going to extend.
Dregs, one last quick one for you, just on the Florida front. I mean, their top 9 looks insane, but they don't have a goalie. And they're running a little bit low on cap space now. So what do you think the plan is between the pipes in Florida?
Yeah, it seems like a game of chicken. I mean, credit to Sergei Bobrovsky and his representative, right? Because they really haven't backed off of what their trade or their signing demands are. But when you've had the level of success that Bobrovsky has had in Florida, what a great area to live in with your family, all of that, it does still feel like there's a deal that is there to be made. But that doesn't mean that Bill Zito is done by any stretch when he gets that goalie signed. I'm not going to throw out some of the names, but there are names that sound like they could be in play, and it's purely cap related. It is interesting, because many people wanted to, before the Brady Tkachuk trade, just connect Florida to Winnipeg with all the Connor Hellebuyck speculation with the goaltending. And I mean, sure, it makes sense. It's fodder for conversation. But if I'm Cheveldayoff, I'm looking for Lundell coming back. And no different in the Ottawa trade. I think Bill Zito just drew the line and said, we're not trading Lundell. So if we're going to make this happen in Ottawa, let's find a different path. And I think that would apply to any sort of trade with Winnipeg, if that's a possibility as well. And with Winnipeg, you've got the added apprehension of Paul Maurice, who does not want to do anything that is perceived as poaching from the city he loved to live in and a team that he loved to work for with the Winnipeg Jets. Wouldn't be his call. That would be up to Zito. But I don't think Florida's done yet. I mean, obviously they have to address goaltending, and maybe there's other trade activity that lessens some of their cap-related pressure at this point as well.
As always, Dregs, great stuff. When's the next episode of the podcast drop?
Yeah, because of all the news, Ryan Rishaug has demanded, as president of Rev Media, that we drop something later today.
This guy.
So today, because it's a busy week, I've got stuff going on. I've got to get some errands done. I got a big high-level bank meeting this morning. And now I got to race. I've got to end this meeting because the president of Rev Media is insisting that we get a podcast done before noon Eastern. So that's what I'd look for it to drop.
All right, man.
10
Well, we'll
o'clock
keep.
here.
You know what? I just. I mean, if you're ever looking for a fresh start, let me know, Dregs. We might be able to make something
Okay,
work.
buddy.
Jeez, Rashog. Hey,
Hey.
what a guy.
Don't tempt me with a good time, Dusty.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later. See you later. There you
care.
go. That's Darren Dreger.